With over 5 years of experience working at this print shop, this is the first time I've encountered such an issue, and it makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. For a person with severe OCD like me, doing everything meticulously and accurately down to the millimeter is how I minimize risks in both work and life. A stray thread, an extra scrap of paper, or an uneven edge always catches my attention and leaves me feeling deeply unsettled. The torn piece of skin on my hand right now is no exception. I feel compelled to clean it up and make it look neat and tidy. Looking at the perfectly treated wound on my hand, I can finally rest easy and fall asleep. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. The itch at my fingertips kept throbbing. The regrowing skin made me restless. I sat up and stared at my finger, seeing it start to scab over, the dry, hard crust and the wrinkled skin around it. So ugly, I calmly concluded. I reached out to peel off the scab, seeing the leftover skin tear a bit more. I kept peeling until the strip of skin extended over 2 knuckles. Looking at the peeled off strip, the pain disappeared, replaced by a feeling of nerve tension, a sense of satisfaction from having done something perfect. I felt my fingertips itching, burning, urging me to act, to make sure my whole hand had matching wounds so the perfect feeling in my eyes could last longer. Perfect, satisfying. That was my first feeling when I looked at the 2 symmetrical wounds on my hands. The clock showed 3 a.m. My eyes were stinging and my hands were sore. I contentedly lay back down to enjoy a good night's sleep. I hadn't been asleep for long when I felt something crawling on me. The sound of something crunching and rustling disrupted my sleep, pulling me from the edge of unconsciousness. Unable to bear it any longer, I bolted upright. I had to find the intruder and get rid of it. Before my eyes was a large ant trying to bite my finger. I've always maintained a spotless lifestyle, so ants have no place in my home. Furious, I crushed the ant, but the rustling sound persisted. I turned to my bedside table, and what I saw was revolting. A swarm of ants was feasting on the discarded bits of skin I had trimmed earlier. The sight sent chills down my spine. Grabbing a can of insect spray, I went on the offensive. The ants were swiftly defeated, and the maddening rustling finally stopped. Utterly exhausted, I decided to ignore my brain's protests and the chaotic mess on my bedside table. I told myself I'd clean it up in the morning. For now, my body desperately needed rest. But sleep wouldn't come. My whole body felt itchy. Maybe it was the venom from the large ant, or maybe it was just my OCD brain rebelling against my laziness. For the 3rd time that night, I woke up. A fiery rage surged through me, and I swore to annihilate anything that dared disrupt my sleep. Then, I found it. A cursed ant was trying to eat me alive. It had burrowed its entire body into the wound on my left hand, leaving only its tail sticking out. I frantically tried to pull it out with my fingers, but the ant succeeded in wriggling entirely into my finger. An unbearable, agonizing sensation overwhelmed me. I could feel every tiny movement of the ant inside my body, its path causing the skin above it to bulge grotesquely. The horror drove me to my limit. I grabbed the edge of the wound and tore the skin away, desperate to catch it. The ant began crawling up my left arm, and I continued ripping the skin in a long, jagged strip, chasing after it as it moved. I focused all my energy on the battle with the ant. It was tunneling under my skin while I tore the flesh above it, creating a path to finally catch it. The chase felt endless, and the strip of skin I peeled away grew longer and longer. Finally, I cornered the ant. The strip of my skin snapped loose entirely, and there it was, right in front of me. Satisfied, I crushed my enemy with all my might. A wave of triumph and pride surged through me, but at the same time, an excruciating, burning pain coursed through my body. Startled, I looked down at myself. My entire body was now stripped of its outer layer of skin, leaving me raw and exposed. The long strip of skin dangled from my hand, but something was pulling at the other end. I turned to look, and there it was. A massive, grotesque ant, far larger than any I'd ever seen. Worse, it was tugging at my skin strip, trying to devour it. Furious, I fought to reclaim my skin. I couldn't live with a body stripped bare like this. But the ant was faster. It opened its enormous jaws and slurped my skin like a strand of spaghetti. The creature swelled, grotesquely growing to the size of a 10-year-old child. Its abdomen bulged to near bursting, and I could see clearly through its translucent belly the remains of the ants I had killed earlier. Along with my skin, the ant let out a smug belch, as if mocking me. Consumed by rage, I lunged at the monstrous creature, determined to destroy it. Caught off guard, the ant couldn't fight back in time. I pinned it to the ground and unleashed a storm of kicks, venting all my fury. Its swollen abdomen couldn't withstand the pressure and burst open with a sickening pop. My skin strip crushed ant corpses, and viscous fluid sprayed all over my room. I stood amidst the chaos, seething with frustration. But first, I needed to retrieve my skin. I stood in front of the mirror, satisfied as I admired my new skin coat. Perhaps this was the perfection I had been searching for all along.
I am Clara, as you may know, and currently I work as a TikTok streamer. I started gaining fame on social media platforms thanks to my cosplay videos wearing furry costumes, also known as fursuits. It may seem a bit strange, but the characters I cosplay have a surprisingly loyal and steady fan base. Thanks to the donations they send me during my live streams, I'm able to maintain a pretty comfortable and stable life. However, to be honest, I don't really enjoy this job that much. The simple reason is that I'm actually allergic to these furry materials. But once the camera is on, I transform into a genuine fursona, the idol of the furry-loving community. After an exhausting live stream, I quickly took off my fursuit and rushed into the bathroom. In the mirror, my body was covered in red rashes, a common reaction to my allergy. I scrubbed my skin vigorously to make sure there weren't any stray hairs stuck on me. After an hour of washing up, I finally felt clean, relaxing on my bed. I started reviewing the donations I'd received. Looking at the top fan list, I was surprised to see one account had donated up to 1,800 coins. Curious, I clicked on the profile and saw that it was a new account that only followed me. While I was still processing this, the account sent me a message. I opened it, trying to appear friendly in my response. We chatted for a bit. Then the account sent me a photo that left me horrified. I could clearly see my home address on a package in the photo. How could he know where I live? I was about to ask when he transferred me an additional $1,000. He said he wanted me to accept this special gift as a simple way to show his admiration for me. I convinced myself to believe his explanation and quickly ended the conversation. The next morning, I found the package sitting outside my front door. I cautiously looked around, but there was no one suspicious in sight. I hurriedly brought the package inside. As soon as I opened the box, a sharp smell of leather hit my nose. Inside was an animal costume made from real Arctic fox fur. A chilling feeling washed over me, making me feel nauseous. I wanted to throw this thing out of my house immediately. Right at that moment, my phone rang. It was that strange account again. I had only just brought the package inside for less than 5 minutes. How could he possibly know? I was sure I was being watched. He sent another message, demanding that I wear the fursuit and go lives that very night. The casual tone of his command made me feel even more uneasy, until I could figure out the identity of the mysterious account owner. I was forced to follow every command he gave, watching each velvety hair move gently in unison, a few strands shedding and drifting in the air. I felt like those hairs would somehow find their way into my lungs and suffocate me. Or perhaps they would pierce my skin through the pores. Horrifying images flashed through my mind, but I clenched my teeth and forced myself to put on the costume. The live stream began, and that demonic account appeared first, as if it had been waiting for me for a long time. The overwhelming smell of leather inside the suit made me feel like I was going to pass out. When the live stream ended, I quickly took off the suit to check my body, but the sight before me filled me with horror. The protective layer I wore underneath seemed corroded, torn, with patches of skin exposed and covered in red rashes. I was certain there was something wrong with this fursuit, or maybe it was infested with some bizarre insect like lice. Panicked, I rushed into the bathroom, desperately trying to scrub every last bit of fur off my body. That night, I couldn't get a wink of sleep, feeling an unbearable itch crawling all over me. The next morning, the red rashes on my skin hadn't subsided. Instead, they had worsened, turning into frightening blisters. I quickly looked for my allergy medicine, only to realize I had already used it all up last night. And then came that damn Love Clara account again. He asked if I had been itching all night. I was sure he knew about my allergy to fur. I was furious and desperate to uncover his identity. Just then, he sent me a video clip, a part of my past I wanted to bury forever. The clip that went viral in the furry community was, in fact, the very same one filmed and uploaded by the bullies from my high school days as a twisted trophy. They mocked my chubby figure and large chest, thrilled to capture my allergic reaction to fur on camera. They took my suffering as their entertainment. It's ironic, but those very clips made me famous. I dropped out trying to escape that school and started streaming to make a living. Now those bullies have come back, trying to ruin my life all over again. The bully demanded that I wear the fox suit and go outside. Fearing he might publicly expose something even more humiliating, I reluctantly obeyed. I walked, keeping an eye on my surroundings, trying to rush to the pharmacy as quickly as possible. After finally buying allergy medication, all I wanted was to get home, wash up, and get rid of the itching all over my body. But just then, a crowd surrounded me. Cameras pointed at me from all directions, scaring me as people's faces lit up with excitement, each one shouting my name, claiming to be a fan, asking me to perform for them. I wanted to run, but I knew this had to be part of the bully's plan, and he was probably hiding somewhere within the crowd. So, I had no choice but to stay and start dancing as they requested. I could feel the blisters on my body bursting one by one. The itchiness faded, replaced by a burning, stinging pain. I stood there dancing endlessly like a soulless puppet, feeling no pain, no exhaustion, because in front of me were my genuine fans. Without their love, I had nothing left. I danced until my body could no longer stand, and the shadows closed in around me. When I regained consciousness, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. I tried to take off the fur suit, but I couldn't. The costume had fused with my raw, damaged skin. Each strand of fur seemed to be growing directly from my flesh. I had become a real furry. I watched in horror as the nurse called for help. 2 other staff members rushed over, lifting the boy's unconscious body from the chair and carrying him out of the room. My heart pounded, breaths shallow and ragged, and the room fell silent. Now, it was my turn. The nurse, her face calm and composed, turned to me. The sound of her approaching footsteps echoed in my ears. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as she neared, the metallic clink of medical instruments reverberating through the room. The acrid stench of alcohol flooded my nostrils, sharp and overwhelming, making my stomach churn. She snapped her gloves into place, preparing for the injection. I tried to take deep breaths, but each inhalation seemed to shrink the space around me. The nurse pulled a fresh needle from its sterile packaging. My eyes locked on the thin, gleaming object. And then it happened. As she lifted the needle into the air, my mind betrayed me. In one horrifying instant, I saw it flying towards me, not at my arm, but straight into my eye. The shiny point seemed to pierce the air itself, and a scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. I clutched my face, pressing my palms against my eyes, convinced the needle had already impaled me.
Miss, are you okay?
The nurse's voice broke through my panic, but it was distant, muffled, like I was underwater. Her hands were on my shoulders, gentle but firm.
Hey, you're okay! I haven't even started yet.
I pulled my hands away from my face, blinking rapidly. My eye wasn't bleeding. There was no sharp pain. I was fine. It was all in my head. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and gave her a shaky nod, though my heart still raced. And my skin felt clammy.
Deep breaths, all right?
The nurse said softly, her voice soothing. She resumed her task, though now I could see the concern in her eyes as she approached me more cautiously. The needle glinted again, but this time I forced myself to stay still. My arm felt cold as she swabbed it with alcohol, the sensation spreading like ice across my skin. I braced for the worst, every muscle in my body tense. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then came the needle. The sharp sting broke through my fog of dread, and the sensation traveled up my arm, leaving a strange numbness in its wake. I stared at the tube connected to the needle, watching in horror as the dark red liquid was slowly drawn up, drop by drop. My body felt weightless, as though every ounce of blood was being drained from me. I couldn't move. When the nurse finally withdrew the needle, I barely noticed it was gone. But then, the needle had broken. I saw it! The tip of the needle was still lodged in my arm, protruding from my skin. My breath caught in my throat, and panic surged through me once again. Blood sprayed from the wound, splattering across my face. I gasped, my hands shooting up to cover the spot, but the pressure only made the blood flow faster, coating my hands and dripping down onto the floor. The nurse didn't seem to notice. She calmly wiped my arm and placed a bandage over the wound, her hands steady and detached.
All set,
she said, stepping back with a polite smile.
You can go now.
I sat there frozen in place. Couldn't she see what was happening? My blood was everywhere. The needle was still inside me. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was already walking away. I stumbled to my feet, my vision swirling, and I made my way out of the room. The hallway seemed endless, and my legs felt weak beneath me. When I reached the exit, I couldn't wait any longer. I ripped the bandage from my arm.